Hello there, and welcome to this episode of the Padawan Unlimited podcast, YouTube edition. Earlier today, October 1st, 2024, I saw a video from Veiled Shot come out on Ray Blue. So I thought I'd continue with this leader combination to give better insight on how she performs in a competitive environment. So I talked about this last week, where I placed third at a Store Showdown, and then this past weekend I was at a Planetary Qualifier warm up at Bitter Dragon in New Jersey. It was a 35 player event. I placed third, and the top 8 decided not to prize share, so I can't say how I would have placed in the top cut. Maybe I would have placed top 4, probably maybe would have stayed in top 8. Really depends on who I got paired with. But I do want to give an analysis real quickly on my performance and where I think Ray Blue will go into the future, at least for this next coming month before the new set releases. So like I said, third overall at a 35-player tournament. Round 1, I played a Bubba Yellow, really great competitor, really tough. I had to eke out a win on the third game, but it was 2-1. Round 2, I placed actually a friend of mine, also a very strong competitor, Kylo Yellow, but I beat him out 2-0. Round 3, I played Sabine Green. This one was actually pretty scary. I lost against Sabine Green 1-2 at the last tournament I was in a top cut, but I did eke out a 2-0 victory here. Round 4, I played against a Kyo Red, and this was probably the toughest matchup I had, and I'll talk about it a little bit more, but I don't think Ray Blue is meant to defeat this type of mill deck. And then for round 5, I played Boba Yellow again. And it's a theme with Boba Yellows. I was 2-1 as well, so I took one, they took one, and then I finished out the third game. So a couple things I just want to talk about when you're entering, if you decide to use Ray Blue in a tournament setting, right? You're going to see at least a third of the field play some type of Boba or Sabine aggro type thing. So you should really prepare for that, obviously. And some very clear strategies I have is just make sure you clear the board until around 8 resources. If you can make it to 8 resources, you're going to be in really good shape, and the win usually comes soon after. When it comes to Boba Yellow is still tough regardless of the matchup. They can have really great swings, especially if they're good pilot. What I've found is that game 1 is pretty much a coin flip. If you can win game 1 without sideboarding, you are in a very good position to win the rest of the games, or at least give them a run for their money. Once you get the sideboard, this is where I see that Ray Blue really starts to outclass Boba Yellow, and I say it's 60% chance after that, because when you throw in, and we're going to talk about this in the next couple slides, when you start throwing in top target, because Boba has so many unique units, you're getting 6 health back every time you kill one, right? And if you have 3 of those top targets, you're getting 18 health back, on top of everything you already do kind of naturally with the 3 vigilances. It's really hard for them to recover, especially if you can get over the hump, the 5-6 resource hump. The game becomes much easier. In regards to Sabine, if Sabine decides to start ECLing early, they're a good player, and what I mean by that is because they're trying to make sure that your board doesn't get too wide too early, and then if they sideboard in, for example, a Sundari Peacekeeper, or not sideboard, if they ECL in a Sundari Peacekeeper, for example, to take out one of your units, and now they have healing on the board with a 5 health unit, and they'll have 2 units on another unit probably on top of that. It is going to be very hard to recover from that, especially if the Sabine has, everything it needs on curve. So Poe on 5, Wrecker on 6, right? If you didn't take out Sabine early and they decided to wait, which they do, if Sabine starts to wait, then you have to be careful for Darksabers, right? And we're going to talk about how we can combat that later, but it's suffice to say that if Sabine is ECLing early, be careful, because that also kind of means that they probably have a timely intervention that they're going to use on you, right, later on in the match. So be careful of that. I just so happen to win against this Sabine, but it's not a given. And then the most difficult matchup here was Kira Red, and it really gave me some thoughts on how not I, but also any Rey Blue person would need to address this in the tournament, because this is going to be a losing matchup and like pretty much a guaranteed loss. This player also lost against a Kylo Yellow. So there is ways to get under that deck, and hopefully the matchups work in your favor in a tournament. But if you don't win game one, you're going to go to time, and it's going to be very difficult to not lose. So you should always play the first game like you need to win, right? Don't take it for granted. And then aside from that, I think I didn't play any like soft control or any green decks this round. And by green I mean like a command Kira or like a Boba command, which are also very difficult. But I would imagine that if I did, my record probably would have changed a little bit. But let's move on to the next thing, the next portion of this video. So I created instead of kind of talking about the entire main deck, I'm going to talk about just some considerations for the future if you are playing Rey Blue at the tournament level. So you're going to see here a couple cards that you should be familiar with, maybe from set 1, that I think actually provide really good value for you as a player. And it helps again, and you'll notice a theme with things that I do when it comes to decks. I want them to have more than one purpose. There needs to be cross, functional synergies. And so the first one I have here is Confiscate. I actually am probably going to main deck Confiscate. I actually do already. Main deck Confiscate for going to tournaments. And I say this because Confiscate does 3 really good things. One, it will against Sabine, it's going to get rid of Darksaber. Against Boba, it's going to get rid of Snapshot, right? DL Blaster, it can get rid of shields, whatever you need to do, it's going to get rid of something. But then also against like a command deck, so let's say Kira or Palp, or even a Gideon that has a Relentless, Confiscate's a 1 cost that you can just, if you have in your hand, keep until that point, burn the event, and then you can play your fellow dragon. So there's a lot of purposes to Confiscate, and knowing that against aggro this deck has a really good win rate, you need to plan against everything else, and Confiscate does that. Even against another hard control deck, for example, you can they might play Entrenched on you. Use your Confiscate, right? Make it difficult for them, right? And that's the purpose of this card. The second card that I haven't seen a lot of play, and this is a really strong innovation. Joined a Discord recently, local competitors, and someone brought this up, and I thought it was such a good idea that I'm probably going to main board this going to tournaments. And Regional Governor is fantastic because it doesn't have that villainy, which is awesome, which means that, like, let's say if you keep Rey, you can heal this up and give it a shield. But also, it's a 2-drop, so it's still a turn 1 play. Very important for this deck. If you don't have a turn 1 play, which actually happened to be in one of the tournaments, in this tournament, I lost that game against a Boba. So you should keep your ratios high, and Regional Governor still means that you have a turn 1 play. And then, has the 1 played where if this card is not killed, right, and still on the board, another person can't play a card. So let's say turn 1, you have Regional Governor, and you're playing Boba, say Toro. If you're at 3 resources and you're going to play it, you could say Cunning for the next one. When you're playing against Sabine, you could, if you play this first game, not first game, you play this for the first round, you can say Fleet Lieutenant. And so you're really stymieing them. And because this is a 4 health unit with one one power 4 health, it's going to take most units or most players 2 cards to kill it, or they're going to try to bounce it, which is fine. It's a 2 cost. It's still cheap to put back in. And then it's still upgradable using Rey. You could upgrade it twice. So just like R2-D2, it ends up becoming like a 3/6, big body. They're going to waste, I don't know, a takedown on it. They're going to waste Unravel's Fall at the best case scenario. They're going to waste something. They're going to waste units trying to kill it. It's great. And so I'm going to mainboard this. I think that I'm going to tweak a little bit to see which one I want to get rid of. I think it's going to be Moisture Farmers, and then maybe 1 or 2 other cards. Maybe I'll down a tech. But this is going to be really good. And then, like I said, you could even do it, Overwhelming Barrage, Relentless, any of the cards that are really annoying, throw this in right before right before you think they're gonna play it, and now you stymied their entire strategy, and they have to deal with it. And then the other main deck consideration is, Rival's Fall is kind of a bread and butter for a lot of decks now, but it is a 6 cost. Although it defeats any unit, by the time a leader's out to play, at most of them kind of around 6, like, you should find other ways. You should be finding other lines to kill that leader without having to use Rival's Fall. That's just I'm finding that to be more meaningful. And then so what I'm thinking about doing is swapping it with Vanquish, because if you're already dealing with a leader, you might as well keep the removal. But now you're saving yourself 1 resource, so you can use that 1 resource with Rey, for example, to create an upgrade, or to use Confiscate, or to use Restock, right? Like all these other things, there's more opportunity to play 2 or more like plays in a turn, whereas Rival's Fall, that's your entire turn, and that's not necessarily super efficient. So again, some considerations. I might keep Rival's Fall, might not, but so far I'm leaning towards throwing in Vanquish instead. If we go to the sideboard, you're going to, sideboarding is an art. And I didn't really recognize this as an art until I really started getting into the competitive scene. And sideboarding is always a difficult choice, right? Regardless of how you're playing, it's always kind of tough. But for these games that I'm going into now and the tournaments that I've been playing at, what I've been doing is I've been actually removing the Conquer Dawn Interceptors and all 3 of them, in order to bring in one or many of the cards to the right. You'll see, I have more than obviously these in the sideboard. I sideboard in like Second Chance, for example, but these are the ones that I think you should really consider on a regular basis. So the reason I get rid of Conquer Dawn Interceptors, even though it's a really good card against space, is because you already have a lot of answers to a lot of space units. Like you could use Takedown, you could use Fell the Dragon, etc. So there's already 6, and then and Vanquish and or Rival's Fall, so 7 in the main board, and your deck is full of ground units already, so you can use those to kill and then save your removal package for space. And then also Conquer Dawn is a 3 cost, so you don't want to sideboard out turn 1 plays. If you side out turn 1 plays, you're putting yourself at a statistical disadvantage, right? So you're not going to take out Restored Arcs and keep your Conquer Dawn Interceptors, because you don't want it. The worst thing that can happen is if you don't have a turn 1 play, or you're trying to you mulligan to try to get a better hand, and then you have nothing to play. So that's why I think Conquer Dawn as a baseline is usually what I take out, unless I see that the opponent has a very strong space presence after game 1. Then you have to think about other things. So I might sideboard out like a Sugi, right, or another tech, or one of my techs from the main board if it's more of an aggro play. Top target is, against aggro, you're going to throw all 3 in like automatically, so it's almost like a 1-for-1 swap with Conquer Dawn Interceptors and top target. If you're playing against a mill deck, right, if you're playing against another hard control, I'm still going to swap out the Conquer Dawn Interceptors generally. I might, if you are playing with lightsabers, I would also suggest you throw those out or you sideboard those out as well, and you'll throw in restocks and confiscates. Again, these restocks very critical against a mill deck, and then confiscates are really good against any other control deck as well, where they might have some upgrades. Like if they throw in a Childson, throwing in a confiscate makes it easier to deal with, or again against like a Relentless. And then against the mill long game, you're gonna throw in another tech. Right now, I usually have two. Right now, I brought it down to one, seeing how that feels. But you should always have at least one or two techs in your deck in some form or fashion. Ideally, you're going to want three to combat against the mill and hard control. So again, these are some sideboard considerations that I think are going to really be helpful if you're going into a competitive scene. And then some final thoughts. Thought I'd throw in some statistics here that I've kind of found. Again, because Rey Blue is it seems easy to play, but it's very technical in that you have to understand what the other side is potentially going to do. You have to fake them out. You have to recognize when you can be aggressive and you're not just controlling the entire time versus when you have to make your board very big. And what I found is that overall, Rey Blue has a good win rate. I would say 50 to 55% against, if you just go against like 100 decks. I've been playing Rey Blue for several weeks now, and as you can imagine, I have played a lot of games against a lot of different people, and I literally fluctuate in between 50 to 55% at any given point. So again, it's not like, I know most people want to have like that 60% win rate, 70% win rate, but this is a pretty good deck. It's like I mentioned earlier, it's a coin flip against aggro players, specifically Bob and Sabine. But once you sideboard in top target, the chances increase to 60+%. Like it's very hard for them to come back, especially if you get an advantageous board state. Against other mid-range and command decks, you're at kind of like a 40%-ish win rate. I've just so happened to win in tournaments against them. And by them, I mean like Kira Green, which is a pretty hard matchup. I would say here, the idea, if you are thinking about milling them, don't do it. And so what I mean by that is, if you think you're down and then you're going to just try to, use your vigilances to just mill them, I would suggest against that, because what you end up doing is you give up your board, and once you give up your board, you're done. Like you're not going to win, because they're going to throw in Avengers, they're going to start throwing in their Devastators, they're going to start throwing in the Reinforcement Walker, right? These cards are going to destroy you, and for what? To get rid of 18 cards and maybe get them to take 6 damage a turn. Like it's just it's losing strategy. I've tried it. I've tried it a handful of times. It just doesn't work. So what I would suggest is only if you are going to mill against a mid-range or command like green deck, only do it when you have a lot on the board, when you know that you just wiped, like say like their Snoke or another powerful unit, and you have more health. So that's when you should do it. I think when you implement that strategy, your win rate goes to more of a coin flip instead of 40%. And then against other hard controls and mill decks, this is the toughest window to play against. And so examples of this may include Boba Blue, Cad Bane Blue, Bosk Blue. These decks are very hard to win against, and you need to really practice your mill game. If you don't know the right lines to play here, so like to restock, and then what cards you need to restock for, I would suggest, especially if you're close to a PQ, just accept that you're going to lose here, and sharpen up your skills against the mid range and command, because at the end of the day, those are going to be probably 60 to 80% of the of the field anyway. And so a PQ and it's 120 people. That means that to get to the top 8, right, you need to have either a 7-0 record or more likely you're going to get 6-1. And you might as well make sure that the chances you have for that 6 wins, particularly it's probably going to be aggro mid range, shore that up so that your win rate is 60 plus %, and then expect just the loss against the mill deck or super hard control. And if you win, great. But if you don't, at least you didn't sacrifice your chance for the other wins against, again, aggro and mid range. Okay, and so if you have any questions, comments, concerns, feel free to reach out to me in the comments or DM me on social media. Padawan Unlimited is also on Instagram, for example. Remember, like, subscribe, tell your friends, and good luck to all of you out there. We are beginning the PQ month, and may the force be with you.